Hi Stonewall, I'm Onyx the Eevee. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. Glad to have you. Today, redemption. Everyone loves a villain, but what's better than a villain? A villain that eventually becomes a good guy. Now, some people would argue that they like this character because they were a bad guy, but I would argue everyone has their own taste and stuff. But when it comes down to talking about the idea of character redemptions, one character in particular always comes up. And now, I will say, this particular character is a great example of what you should do when writing a redemption arc. His character arc does everything right when it comes down to this, and it also is very, very obvious that the writers knew what they were doing. But the Fire Boy from Avatar the Last Airbender is kind of over-talked about. Now, I'm not saying that he's not the best example in fiction, but there's other characters that are also just as good as him when it comes down to this. So, for this entire video, I am not going to say this character's name. And if I do, Quartz is behind the camera with a foam ball gun, and he will shoot me indiscriminately if I say it.
Hi.
He is there at all times. So just so you know, I am under threat with this. So, with no further ado, let's dive on in. Now, before we can get started, let's talk about what a redemption arc actually is. A redemption arc is when a character who is evil goes to them being actually good. You would think that this would be obvious, but a lot of the times people confuse evil with just being a little bit of a jerk. An example of a character whose standard character arc gets confused with a redemption arc is Rexplode from Invincible. Now, Rex is a good example of a great character arc. He goes from a jerk of a character who does a lot of jerk things to those around him to a character who does his best and went out in a blaze of mother-ducking glory. But it's not a redemption arc. He started as a jerky hero and became a better person and still a hero. He's a hero at both ends of his arc. He's never a villain, so that's something you have to keep in mind. Also, when it comes down to the differences between villain and antagonists, I'm working on that video. Someone who's actually a villain who becomes a good guy hits the first step of the redemption arc. Being evil. Now, when it comes down to this, it's a simple situation of just because a character is evil does not mean that they have to be evil. Doing bad deeds because they think it's a good option versus doing bad deeds because they have fun with it are two different types of evil, and both of these could lead to different arcs. So make a character evil, but step 2 is humanize them. Give them someone that they care about. Give them a backstory. Give us a look into their psyche so that we know what they're doing. Along with, make us understand who they are. And the number one rule of storytelling is make the audience care. Anyone who says that the number one rule of storytelling is show don't tell is wrong. It's make the audience care. So that's what humanizing a character does. Now, when I say humanizing, it does not necessarily mean sympathizing with them. When I say humanizing, it can mean mainly making them an actual person. It's one thing to make someone a cardboard cutout of a trope. It's a different thing to actually give them wants, needs, and stuff that they actually want to accomplish. And this can start at any point. While I call these steps, they're actually just guidelines and points you can hit throughout the character arc. You can technically hit them in any order. But it's recommended that you give the audience a reason to care early on about a character arc, so when a character starts going down the redemption arc, the audience will actually be invested rather than being bored that the villainous character is slowly becoming less and less evil. In addition to this, you also have to give them consequences. An example of a character with a character arc that humanizes them is Omni Man from Invincible.
Are you sure?
Pretty sure. Omni Man, or Nolan Grayson, or just Nolan, starts off as a hero, starts off as a villain masquerading as a hero. The classic evil Superman trope. That's its own video.
Good thing is Mark's more Superman than Omni Man.
Yeah. It comes down to his arc. It starts basically years before the actual series begins. That's a whole season 4 thing. But we can see right off the bat that Omni Man, at least in the show, already has empathy, and that's something that the other Viltrumites aren't showing quite yet. He has human parts of him, and clearly he has some
regrets,
along with is not exactly fully on board with the idea of taking over the planet. It's clear, even when he's trying to convince his own son to do it, that he is not fully convicted himself. He's actually slowly getting more human, even before he ever comes to Earth. Season 4 spoilers here. We see during the entire events of the Scourge virus, oh boy, that was a messy thing, that he is already showing some signs of empathy for those who are afflicted. When he himself gets afflicted and then gets better, he seems sad and even disappointed that the woman that he was sharing a cubicle with did not make it. Even more so when he's helping with the cleanup of the Scourge virus. His reaction
That's not a planet ring right there.
Yeah, it's not. It's not a naturally occurring planet ring. He sees his father, and while the actual Viltrumite mantra is they were weak, therefore they died, you can see that he has that brief glint of mourning. And even in dialogue during season 1, it shows that he actually cared and mourned his parents. We don't know what happened to his mom, but it shows that he is human before he ever even landed on Earth. And throughout his entire stay on Earth, he slowly becomes more and more human. And another thing with Omni Man, it wasn't all at once. This is not exactly a step, but more of a rule. Editing me, add the rule side over here, and add the step side over here.
Editing Onyx, don't listen to her, start dancing instead.
Essentially, whenever it comes down to a character arc, pacing is also very important, especially with a redemption arc. It is one thing to have a character go from realizing that they're a bad guy to the character automatically being on Team Good. Believe it or not, someone having to reconcile that their entire belief system, along with the moral compass that they have been using to this point, has been completely busted this entire time. You can't exactly just do that. A character arc takes time and actually needs evidence that it happened. Harry Potter! Longtime viewers of this channel knows that I am definitely not Snape's #1 fan. Severus Snape's character arc. Severus Snape's quote-unquote character arc sucks. His redemption is non-existent. Now, did he go from being team bad guy to team good guy? Yes. Did his morals change? Did his motivations actually show that he was becoming a better person? Mother flippin' no! Severus Snape switched from team bad guy to team good guy, not because he realized that the Death Eaters, who are trying to take over the world and subjugate anyone who goes against them, he did not realize that they're the bad guys because of that. He didn't realize that they're the bad guys because the evil, I want to rule the world guy is willing to kill the gal that Snape was in love with. Mind you, he had not talked to her for years. So, he went to Dumbledore and said, I want to join Team Good Guy. I will do anything if you save her. I don't care about her husband and child. Just save her. And now you can argue, and people have, that he got better and that he was doing all this stuff to protect the students. No, he flippin' wasn't. Look, the movies skip over a lot of his worst cases of how he treats his students, but just because he's on Team Good Guy does not mean that he's a good guy. He's still a jerk, he's still egotistical, and he still holds grudges. He threatened to kill Neville's pet for failing at potions. He actively treated Hermione terribly and showed heavy amounts of favoritism. He did everything in his power to make sure that Harry could not actually enjoy his time at school, and potentially ruined the actual subject of potions for several students. That's not exactly good guy behavior, and let alone good teacher behavior. Now, yeah, it's clear that Severus was loyal to Dumbledore along with the cause of the Order of the Phoenix. But that does not mean his actual motivations for becoming a good guy or his redemption is well written or well handled. He's still in the same moral spot that he was the entire time, and it's clear that he never really atoned for any of the stuff that he did as a Death Eater. Nor did he actually make amends for the stuff that he did to his own students. Now, I will give Cursed Child one thing. It made it clear that Snape had at least improved as a person briefly. That is the only thing I will be giving Cursed Child. But Snape's lack of a redemption arc kind of just shows why you can't just have a character arc happen completely off screen and apply it. Also, next rule / also step, motivation. This is something that you also have to keep in mind when it comes down to redeeming a character. Why are they redeeming themselves? Is it because they realized that the organization that they were working for and being evil for was actually the evil one? Are they realizing the error of their ways, or are they seeing the people that they hurt? Do they have someone that they want to be better for, or a group of someone's? Give us something with that. Snape's love for Lily is more of an obsession. That movie thing. It's an obsession that is weird and very creepy. And that's the only actual reason we get for him wanting to be good. If we would have gone something like, he wants to prove that he's not the same man he once was, he actually wants to take responsibility for the death and destruction he caused, he wants to, anything else, including that, would have been better. Or if it wasn't just the fact that he was in love with Lily. Literally, give me anything here. And back to an actually good character arc, Omni Man has several reasons for wanting to be a good guy now. He has his family, who he wants to make things up for. He has the Earth that he doesn't want to see destroyed, and also wants to make things up for. He has the countless lives that he has ruined in the name of the Belgian Empire that he wants to prove that he's not the same man for. He wants to do better, and while he does miss one part of his redemption arc, it's a learning moment. Something else that comes up with redemption arcs is atonement. A character who does evil things should actually face consequences for the evil things they do. In addition to this, it's not up to those who they hurt to forgive them. Now, when it comes down to atonement, along with consequences, it's kind of a situation where we don't necessarily need to see it happen on screen. Especially when it comes down to stories that have a limited runtime. It should not take time for the characters to kind of just sit down and talk about, hey, I forgive you for this. Also, probably the people that they hurt should not have to forgive the bad guy. Crazy concept, but yeah. Just because the bad guy says that they're sorry for everything they did does not mean the heroes have to forgive them. Quick spoiler warning for Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal. Goro Akechi, also known as Pancake Boy, is an example of a character who we really didn't get to see a lot of his villainy, so that holds back his redemption, and we also don't really get to see a lot of the stuff he did as a good guy, which also holds back his redemption. Persona 5 Royal fixes this by adding us the third semester, and us actually getting to see him as who he actually is. He has similar goals to the protagonist, and while you could say that he didn't change his morals, you do also see that he sees the errors in his ways, and while his main goal is to have his life for himself and define it himself, it's still clear that he wants to help everyone and he's not just in it for himself. And in addition to this, the characters that he hurt, especially in the main group, don't forgive him. While they don't hold it over his head and they actually understand that he's trying to do better, they don't just say, hey, I know you killed my parents, but we're all good now. Because that wouldn't make sense. Just because a character is sorry does not mean that they should get forgiveness. Something that I'm not looking forward to in the Invincible show that happened in the comics is Debbie forgives Nolan for all of his stuff and the two get back together. While it makes sense that Nolan saying sorry to Space Racer and a few of the other groups that the Viltrumites hurt, it makes sense for that because Viltrumites don't say sorry, and it was showing that he was on the right side and not just using them. Because Viltrumite pride and all that blah blah blah. In addition to this, it's important to actually have the character take responsibility. This goes back to atonement and, of course, consequences. In Avatar the Last Airbender, a very notable character arc, but not the one you're thinking, ha ha ha, Iroh was a bad guy. He was a guy who did bad things. He siege bossing Say and even laughed about burning it to the ground. A city full of innocent civilians. He laughed about that. Iroh was a bad guy and he acknowledges that. And it's clear that he actively is trying to make up for the wrong and imbalance that he caused into the world. And it's clear that his motivation isn't just for, oh, my dead son, that he feels bad for. Iroh losing his son is definitely the thing that truly kicked off his arc. Especially because he finally got to see it from the other group's perspective. This goes back to the idea of giving the villain a reason to redeem himself. Iroh losing his son gave him perspective of what he was doing to so many others. Being born a Fire Nation prince with the understanding that this is a noble war and all that, it makes sense that he really wouldn't have that perspective. We see this in the nephew that I'm not allowed to mention the name of, along with Azula. Which, Azula is a completely different video that we could talk about. But, when it comes down to it, Iroh atones and makes up for what he does. He doesn't go to every single person that he hurt or the various people that he took their children from and say, I am so sorry for what I've done. He lets his actions speak. He doesn't actively seek out the forgiveness because he knows he can't be forgiven for this. There is no forgiveness at the end of this. And that is something that you have to keep in mind with a lot of redemption arcs. You have to let the villain's actions speak louder than the words. Especially if that character is a main character. A fire character in the Mighty Nein. In the Mighty Nein, there's a wizard who uses fire-based magic known as Caleb. He is one of the main characters. While I do not know what actually happens in the Critical Role podcast, so I'm just going off of the first season of the show, Caleb was a bad guy. He committed several atrocities for the secret magic police, and even killed his own family. But he is now a good guy doing everything he can to fight against the bad guys. We don't know specifically at what point he turned against them. We can probably guess at what point his resolve started to fail. But it's clear he's no longer with them. But he's still going through that arc. Caleb is an example of the final step. Keep going. If you are writing a character who is getting redeemed and you end their arc at, hey look, they're now a good guy. I'm not going to say that you failed writing this character, but you did miss a good opportunity. I mentioned when talking about Akechi that we missed a good part of turning a villain into a hero by missing out on them actually being a hero. That is something that happens a lot when it comes down to redemption arcs because it either ends with, hey, look, they're good now they're a side character, ha ha ha. Or, oh, they did a noble sacrifice, how poignant to end their character development, knowing that they gave their life for their cause. Snore fest! I want to see this character actually struggle with their redemption, and along with actually growing as a person outside of their redemption. There are several ways that you could take this arc. Just because a character is now good does not mean that they are fully on the moral side of the good guys. You could have an easy example of a character who was once a villain trying to use an extreme method to get the hero's goal accomplished. Because that's an easy way to do it. It's an easy way to butt heads and show character development along with character relation as you see the other characters, interact. A character arc should never be isolated, especially a redemption arc, because it's heavily dependent on the relationships that someone has or does not have. It is very important to not just end that character's arc once they're redeemed. Caleb doesn't. Caleb's arc, from what we can see from season 1 of the Mighty Nein, he is still grappling with the choice he made to, be a villain in the first place, but also now be a better person. It's a lot easier to just go back to Team Bad Guy, and it would probably be a lot safer for him as well. But he doesn't. He's not taking that long road. There's some redemption arcs that have kind of messed up. Now, I'm not saying that these are bad characters, but back to character arcs that we happen mostly off screen. Nebula. Nebula is a fun character. Guardians of the Galaxy is a fun series. Can you tell me the exact point that Nebula went from a bad guy willing to let the worlds burn to someone who's actually a good guy?
I guess around the second time she crashed her ship into Gamora?
Something like that. But it's kind of hard because we see a lot of her development off screen, and it's implied. By the time of Endgame, she is firmly in Team Camp Hero, but it's kind of hard to tell at the end of 2. At the end of 1, it's obvious, but at the end of 2, she's still very herself, and you can argue that she's trying to do what she's gonna do for noble reasons, but we don't really get a lot of arc from her. Not like we do with a lot of the other characters. Meanwhile, I'm not talking about Snape again. I do not want to talk about Snape again.
You want me to shoot you if you bring up Snape?
Nah. Essentially, when it comes down to a character arc, we should actually see the point where things start to shift. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily need to be an exact moment, but it should be multiple moments that it's clear that this character is no longer the same person that they were. Yeah, with Nebula, it's clear that she's not the same person at the end of Guardians 3 as she was at the end of Guardians 1. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to see exactly where she falls during Guardians 2, making her arc less than stellar. In addition to this, back to the whole noble sacrifice thing, I'm not exactly sure I can call Jet a villain, so I'm going to go to a different fandom that will probably get mad. Star Wars. I make it a habit to kind of mess with Star Wars characters, but Kylo Ren was not ducking redeemed, and his redemption is dumb. I'm convinced that Kylo Ren was not supposed to be redeemed, and the only reason why he was is because of simps. Along with shippers. Simps and shippers. That's the reason why this guy went from a bad guy to that.
I mean, I would say that the movie's having 3 different directors who all wanted 3 different directions. Was it 3 different directors or 2 different directors?
I don't even know at this point, but they didn't have a plan.
They didn't have a plan, and that kind of... Don't improvise your movie series.
Look, Bill, that's a different thing, and I can pick apart the sequel trilogy all I want. But the thing is, with Kylo Ren, it's clear that he should have gone down a full corruption arc, and while we kind of do see it, the lack of planning in the sequel series kind of ruined the entire idea behind this. A rule for writing any arc: have a mother ducking plan. Everything you can do actually show that this character is becoming a good guy. For the longest time of his being a character, they tried just keeping him in the gray, dark gray, dark gray. Hey, look, light, now he died. That's not even getting into the other things related to this. But what's important when it comes down to a character arc is actually making sure the audience understands that it's happening. Not just saying, hey look, this bad guy is going to get redeemed. Another thing is escalation. With any villain or threat, it makes sense that you would have to make sure that the villain actually gets escalated. That it actually shows that there's still a threat even after all these seasons. But if you're constantly having this character do more and more terrible things, by the time you actually get to the redemption arc, the amount of redemption that you can give a character who has killed a lot of people is very, very difficult to do. Especially when it was clear that they probably wanted to redeem this character a lot sooner. Along with the fact of, you can't redeem every single character with a single conversation. I don't care what Naruto says, talk no jutsu is kind of bullshit.
You really shouldn't be making fans of other fandoms like this.
This is the only time I'm gonna make a Naruto reference today. You can't stop me, ha ha ha!
Heed my warnings.
It makes sense that a character actually showing that they want a villain to be redeemed is a good starting point. This is a good thing to give them motivation, to know that someone did not give up on them. But you can't redeem the Joker. You can't redeem someone who's done everything he's done. And you can't redeem a genocidal maniac within one conversation.
Best you can do for the Joker is showing a version of the character where he was good in that dimension.
I love those versions. But that's a different situation. I could rant about the clown and the people who refuse to do anything interesting with his character other than make him worse. But escalating a villain to the point where it would make no sense that they would be redeemed, and then redeeming them as if it was like just their first few actions, it kind of misses the point. Just because you want to keep a villain as a threat for as long as possible does not mean escalating their actions as far as you can, and then seeing how far you can swing the pendulum to good. You have to redeem within reason, along with make sure that the steps to get that character redeemed make sense. While some redeemed characters need a conversation and need to be shown that people actually care about them, other characters that need to be redeemed need to actually see the errors of their ways, along with a lot more than a 5-minute conversation. And some characters are not redeemable. Firelord or Ozai is not redeemable. Probably. He is probably going to be someone who doesn't actually, redeem himself. Now, before anyone comments this, Azula, theoretically, possibly could be redeemed. But that's a comic problem at this point. But I've gone on way too long with this video. And hey look, I didn't even say Zuko once. Oh no! Ah! 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 No! My humerus!
I'm out of ammo.
Well, that's all for today's video. Tell me who's your favorite redeemed character, or what's your favorite villain that you wish could have been redeemed, or what villain do you absolutely think should never have been redeemed or attempted to be redeemed in the first place? What's your thoughts in this video? Tell me in the comments below. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Let me know that too. Anyways, that's all for me. Until next time, I'm off to fight the moon. Bye. Ah!
I found more.
Ah!